Tonight, India's diamond. India celebrates with much pomp and pageantry its 75th Republic Day with Prime Minister Narendra Modi calling for a stronger Bharat. French President Emmanuel Macron graces the occasion as the chief guest. Legal risk. In a first, former President Donald Trump takes the stand to deny sexual allegation charges in his latest legal nightmare. He continues to tussle with the judge, who the former president says is biased. World's first. Alabama has executed convicted murderer Kenneth Eugene Smith with nitrogen gas. The first time the method of capital punishment has been used globally. And it's a cat's world. Cats in the US gets a boost towards adoption. All that and more as World News Tonight starts right now.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here's Mahesh Jani.
A very good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to World News Tonight, the Friday's edition. A lot of stories to bring to your attention, especially there is the first ever nitrogen gas execution that has taken place in the United States, and also many stories from around the world. But first, let's take you to India, where India has dismissed allegations by Pakistan that its agents killed 2 Pakistani citizens on its soil in 2023, calling them false. Pakistan's claims comes after months Ottawa alleged that India was involved on the murder of a Sikh separatist in Canada. India has so far denied their involvement.
Islamabad said it had credible evidence of links between the 2 killings and Indian agents. India's foreign ministry called it malicious anti-Indian propaganda. Foreign Secretary Mohammad Cyrus Kasi called the killings unacceptable and a violation of its sovereignty. He added that the Indian must be held accountable for its blatant violation of international law. India did not directly address the specific allegations raised by Pakistan, but called the country an epicenter of terrorism, organized crime, and illegal transnational activities. India's foreign ministry said in a statement, India and many other countries have publicly warned Pakistan, cautioning that it would be consumed by its own culture of terror and violence. Mr. Kasi also said that the killings in Pakistan were similar to attempts in Canada and the US, though those allegations were about the murders or attempted murders of Sikhs, not Muslims.
Well, congratulations poured out from across the globe as India celebrated its 75th Republic Day with a colourful parade, at which French President Emmanuel Macron was a chief guest. The day marks the anniversary of India officially adopting its constitution, making it a sovereign republic.
Thousands of people lined a ceremonial boulevard in the heart of India's capital to watch a colourful parade showcasing the country's military power and cultural heritage to mark its 75th Republic Day. Ahead of the parade, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid a wreath at a war memorial. Tanks, missile systems, infantry combat vehicles and medium-range surface-to-air missile systems were displayed, with hundreds of police and military personnel marching with them. Stunt performers on motorbikes, including more than 250 women, also participated. This year's guest of honor was French President Emmanuel Macron. A French marching band and contingents also took part in the lavish parade, reciprocating the participation of Indian troops and aircraft in the 2023 Bastille Day parade in Paris. India traditionally invites foreign leaders to witness the spectacle. India won independence from British rule on August 15, 1947, but it was not until January 26 of 1950 that the nation declared itself a sovereign republic state with the adoption of its constitution.
Well, in the latest developments on the Russian plane crash, it has come to light that Russian forces have in fact communicated information on the flight approximately minutes before passing through. Though investigations reportedly found that flight recorders a day after the crash, there was little hope that the circumstances would be clarified in a war where both sides have often used accusations to sway opinions at home and abroad.
Russia says Ukrainian military intelligence was given a 15-minute warning before a Russian military transport plane carrying Ukrainian prisoners of war entered an area where it was shot down on Wednesday. senior Russian lawmaker Andrei Kartapolov on Thursday.
In conditions of modern communication systems, upon receiving this information, there should have been a command, air stop, sent through the specific area, and everything would have been as normal. Obviously, that didn't happen. Instead, the command was sent to open fire, and the plane, with our crew and their servicemen who would now never return home, was shot down. That is, the current Kyiv regime has the blood of their soldiers and officers on their hands.
Moscow accuses Kyiv of downing the Ilyushin Il-76 plane in Russia's Belgorod region, killing all 74 people on board. 65 of those were captured Ukrainian soldiers, it says, en route to be swapped for Russian POWs. The incident is the deadliest of its kind to take place on Russia's internationally recognised territory. Kartapolov's assertion contradicts a statement by Ukrainian military intelligence that Russia had not informed it about the flight arrangements. It does, though, accuse Russia of using its air defence systems in the region when the plane crashed. Ukrainian military intelligence spokesperson Andriy Yusov reiterated that Kyiv hadn't been asked by Russia to refrain from attacks in the airspace where the plane was downed. Moscow has cast the downing of the plane as a Ukrainian terrorist attack. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Wednesday that clarity about what happened was needed. Russia has sole access to the site of the crash. Citing Russia's emergency services, state news agency TASS said fragments of what appears to be a missile have been found at the crash site near the border with Ukraine. It also added that the plane's black boxes had been recovered and would be flown to Moscow for examination. Conflicting narratives from both sides have become a daily feature of the war in Ukraine, which is now nearing the end of its second year.
Let's take you to the current situation in Palestine. Aid workers are struggling to keep supplies going as starvation worsens in the Gaza Strip.
In battered, hard-to-reach North Gaza, rare aid deliveries are mobbed by hungry Palestinians. Aid workers report seeing people thin and visibly starving with sunken eyes. Hunger stalks the entire Gaza Strip, where 2.3 million people live under Israeli bombardment. The United Nations warned this week that pockets of Gaza face famine. Areas near the Egyptian border get limited supplies of imported food. But not the north. Medics in Gaza hospitals describe babies born sick to malnourished mothers, infants losing weight, mothers unable to produce breast milk, and injured patients too weak from hunger to fight off infection. Scenes of chaos and gunfire during an aid distribution in Gaza City.
Now the occupation forces are opening fire on citizens as they receive humanitarian aid in the north of the Gaza Strip, in Al Zaytun neighborhood. This is the sound of gunfire. These are the scenes.
At the start of the war, after a Hamas assault that killed more than 1,200 people, Israel announced it was cutting off all supplies to Gaza. It has since let in humanitarian aid, but far less is entering the enclave now than before. Palestinians interviewed said they often went days without eating, or could only eat once a day. What food is commercially available is often unaffordable. No comprehensive data on hunger is available for Gaza, with aid agencies struggling to move and communicate amid the fighting. UNICEF projects that in the coming weeks, more than 10,000 children in Gaza risk wasting, one of the most serious results of malnutrition, which can stunt physical growth and brain development. Aid agencies say Israeli checks are hampering aid deliveries into Gaza, and the military prevents distribution outside the southern area around Rafah. Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levy has denied such limitations and put any problems down to UN distribution capacity.
Well, Australia is battered and bruised by heavy gusts of winds as Cyclone Kirrily tore through parts of Queensland. Following that story for us tonight is our World News special correspondent Bineth Seneviratne standing by in Melbourne with the latest. Bineth?
Yes, Mahesh. Australia is in grips of an El Nino weather event which is typically associated with extreme phenomena. Tens of thousands of people in Australia's Queensland state were without power after a tropical cyclone hit overnight, bringing damaging winds and heavy rains. Tropical cyclone Kirili, a Category 2 system, made landfall late yesterday along the coast bordering the Great Barrier Reef, near the tourist town of Townsville, before being downgraded to a tropical low today. There were no reported deaths or serious injuries. The Bureau of Meteorology said a severe weather warning remains for heavy rain with the possibility of damaging winds. Northwest Queensland could get around 200 millimeters of rain over the next few days. Mahesh?
Indeed, Bined Seneviratna, the Derana World News Special Correspondent, reporting from Melbourne in Australia. Thank you for that. Well, let's take a short commercial break. More World News right after this. Welcome back everyone to World News Tonight. Now, in the road to the White House, it seems like it's going to be a classic rematch between Joe Biden and Donald J. Trump. But with Biden's blunders seeing a rise and Trump's legal scandals taking center stage, Americans see seeds of doubt sow in their faith in these future nominees.
The two men who faced off in the last U.S. presidential election and appear all but certain to face off yet again later this year showcased their two very different campaign styles on Thursday. U.S. President Joe Biden, in a visit to Wisconsin, talked up his administration's economic achievements.
The economic growth is stronger than we had during the Trump administration. My predecessor recently said he was actually hoping for the economy to crash.
The same day, new data showed better than expected economic growth. The divergent campaign styles come as a new public opinion poll shows Trump with a 6-point lead over Biden. 40% of respondents say they planned to vote for the Republican Trump, and 34% say they'd support the Democrat Biden. The rest said they weren't sure, or that they'd pick someone else. The nationwide poll cannot capture the subtleties of the U.S. electoral system, where the contest will be decided this fall in just a handful of states. But it did capture one clear sentiment. Americans really don't like their options. 67% of respondents polled Monday through Wednesday said they were, quote, tired of seeing the same candidates in presidential elections and want someone new. A significant number said age was a factor. Biden, at 81, is the oldest sitting president. Trump, 77, isn't much younger. One possible wild card, Republican primary candidate and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley,
this race is far from over,
has tried to paint herself as a younger, fresher alternative to either man.
With Donald Trump, you have one bout of chaos after another. This court case, that controversy, this tweet, that senior moment. You can't fix Joe Biden's chaos with Republican chaos.
But Trump's commanding position in the Republican primary makes her candidacy a long shot.
Well, with Nikki Haley, seems to be not having a path towards victory in order to get the Republican nomination nod. It seems like we just mentioned, it's going to be Trump versus Biden. Now, how do they get that nomination and what happens afterwards? Here's a look.
To get their party's presidential nomination, candidates ultimately need one thing: delegates.
Mr. Chairman, delegates and my fellow citizens, I proudly accept your nomination.
A delegate is someone, often a party insider or activist, who represents their community or state at these big party nominating conventions. One for Democrats and one for Republicans. A couple thousand delegates show up to each. Candidates earn delegates from getting votes in primaries and caucuses. So how are they divvied up? Democrats do it the same across the board. All statewide and district delegates are divided proportionally based on the election results. So if a candidate gets 60% of the vote in a state, they'll get about 60% of the delegates. But Republicans have a few different methods. proportional, especially in early states like in New Hampshire, or winner take all, where the candidate who gets the most votes gets all the delegates, like in Arizona. And then some states use a mix. The magic number is 1,215 delegates for Republican candidates to secure the nomination. If they don't lock in the majority of delegates ahead of time, it'll come down to the convention. Now, there are two main types of delegates. Democrats call them pledged and unpledged. Republicans call them bound and unbound. Basically, if a delegate is pledged or bound, they have to vote for a certain candidate at the convention based on how their state voted. But unpledged and unbound delegates can vote for any candidate. It's a small slice of the total delegates, but they could make a difference. This year, Nikki Haley's already trailing Donald Trump, with 17 delegates to Trump's 32. But over the last year, some state GOPs changed the system to favor a frontrunner, making the path to a nomination even harder for Haley. California's GOP, for example, adopted new rules ahead of this cycle. Any Republican candidate who wins more than half the vote there will get all the delegates. And California has 169 of them, more than any other state. What about the dozen delegates that Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy secured in Iowa? The former candidates now backing Trump, but their delegates still need to support them on the first ballot of the convention. There is an exception, though, if there's just one Republican candidate left.
Well, 4 minutes was all it took for Trump at the latest hearing of his defamation suit to deny allegations of sexual abuse leveled at him by writer Jean Carroll. The judge advised Trump to provide yes and no answers only, and on leaving the courtroom, Trump was heard saying, "This is not America."
Donald Trump took the witness stand Thursday to deny E. Jean Carroll's sexual abuse claims in her defamation lawsuit against him. The former U.S. president's testimony ended almost immediately after it began. He was asked by his lawyer if he stood by his 2022 testimony that Carroll's claim that he raped her was a hoax. He responded, quote, 100% yes. Trump only spent 4 minutes on the stand, but clashed often with the judge, who instructed the jury to disregard much of what Trump said that wasn't a yes or no answer, after having told Trump he could not revisit the jury's findings that he had defamed and sexually abused Carroll. The former magazine advice columnist is seeking at least $10 million over Trump's June 2019 denials that he had raped her in the mid-1990s in a department store dressing room in Manhattan. Last May, another jury ordered Trump to pay Carroll $5 million after he denied her rape claim in October 2022. Before Trump testified Thursday, Carroll's lawyers played videotape excerpts from his deposition in which Trump called Carroll, quote, mentally sick and a, quote, whack job, and threatened to sue her. He also said it was a false accusation.
Let's take you to Japan now. Just a couple of months ago, Japan's powerful Liberal Democratic Party faction leader were being talked about as the potential successor to Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. But with the political fund scandal resulting in the dissolution of 4 of the LDP's 6 factions, they have found themselves losing momentum and power as their members start to bolt. Let's get the latest on that story, and for that, let's cross over to our Derana World News special correspondent Rasita Chandradasa standing by in Tokyo with the latest. Rasita.
Hey Mahesh, New Year came with one of the biggest political scandals in recent Japanese political history. The Tokyo Prosecution Office, after their vigorous investigations, have found out that some MPs, actually many MPs of the leading LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, they have been involved in massive financial frauds. I mean, a fraud in a sense that they have not disclosed their financial earnings. Japanese politicians, like many other people here, they have to disclose their financial earnings. And over the past 5 to 10 years, some of the LDP members have not disclosed their financial earnings. So some says these are actually kickbacks. We already have some MPs resign from the party. It's not just the MPs, like the right-hand man of Kishida-san, his cabinet spokesman resigned early this year because he is also involved in this scandal. The Kishida-san's party is a combination of huge factions like Abe factions. As the name says, Abe was the ex-prime minister, and his faction is one of the biggest. And many MPs of his own faction are involved in this scandal. We already saw like few MPs. One MP from the Abe faction got arrested a few days ago because he has not disclosed. People say he had these kickbacks over 500 million Japanese yen. So with this issue is a big headache for the Prime Minister Kishida, because the economy is running well and he was expected to do well in a next snap election which he expected to call early this year. But with the situation now, it would be very hard for him to call any early elections. And the parliament was convened today, and the Japanese parliament sessions expect to run around 150 days. But no one knows whether it would last that long this year. Over to you, Mahesh.
Absolutely. Rasita Chandradasa, other Derana World News special correspondent reporting from Tokyo in Japan. Thank you for that. Well, the United States is a nation self-proclaimed to be a champion of human rights around the world. Well, in addition to their very humane front, we have the world's first ever execution done via nitrogen gas over in Alabama. Murder convict Kenneth Eugene Smith drew his last breath laced with the deadly gas in the new means of execution via asphyxiation.
Alabama on Thursday executed a prisoner with nitrogen gas in what was the first use of a new controversial method of capital punishment. Human rights groups, UN torture experts, and lawyers had sought to prevent it, saying the method was risky, experimental, and could lead to an agonizing death or non-fatal injury. Kenneth Smith was convicted of the 1988 murder for hire of Elizabeth Sennett. He was one of only a few prisoners to have survived an execution attempt. In 2022, Alabama officials aborted his execution by lethal injection after struggling for hours to insert the needle in his body. In Smith's second trip to the execution chamber on Thursday, executioners restrained him in a gurney and strapped a respirator mask to his face. A canister of pure nitrogen was attached to the mask that, once flowing, deprived him of oxygen. Alabama Corrections Commissioner John Hamm told reporters the execution had gone as expected.
It appeared that Warren Smith was holding his breath as long as he could, and then there's also information out there. He struggled against his restraints a little bit, but there's some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected and is in the side effects that we've seen or researched on nitrogen hypoxia. So nothing was out of the ordinary what we were expecting.
5 journalists who were allowed to watch the execution said that after the nitrogen began to flow, Smith shook his head and writhed on the gurney for about 2 minutes, then breathed deeply for several minutes more before his breathing eventually became imperceptible. Before the nitrogen was switched on, Smith made a lengthy final statement that began, quote, "Tonight, Alabama caused humanity to take a step backward." Leading up to the execution, Smith had mounted legal challenges in federal courts, arguing that Alabama's new method amounted to unconstitutional, cruel, and unusual punishment. The U.S. Supreme Court's conservative majority ultimately rejected Smith's final appeal to delay his death. Oklahoma and Mississippi have also approved nitrogen asphyxiation methods for executions, but have yet to deploy it.
Well, let's take a short commercial break. More world news right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to World News Tonight. Now, the Northern White Rhino is a species that is considered as good as gone, with most of its population wiped off the face of the earth. There was little to no hope left for these magnificent creatures until IVF, or in vitro fertilization method, succeeded in creating a stable embryo, relighting the possibility of having the species around in the future.
These are the world's last remaining northern white rhinos, Fatu and her mother Najin. Neither are able to carry a calf to term, and with the last male northern white rhino dying in 2018, it leaves the subspecies on the brink of extinction. but scientists have been working for years on a breeding program to save them. The white rhinoceros includes two distinct subspecies, northern and southern. Northern white rhinos, which are actually gray, used to roam freely in several African countries.
Good go.
But their numbers fell sharply due to widespread poaching. To try and save the subspecies, scientists turned to in vitro fertilization. An international team of scientists from the Biorescue Consortium, a group backed by the German government, harvested eggs from the northern white rhinos. Using the eggs and sperm from dead male rhinos of the subspecies, they produced embryos that eventually will be transferred to southern white rhino surrogate mothers. To test the concept, the scientists said on Wednesday they transferred the embryo of a southern white rhino into a surrogate mother of that subspecies on September 24, 2023. The team confirmed a pregnancy of 70 days with a well-developed 2.5-inch long male embryo. Scientists said the proof of concept allows them to now safely move to the transfer of northern white rhino embryos.
Well, if you know, sportsmen are supposed to be very macho and very, strong, muscular men, but you don't really hear that them loving cats or something very simplistic. That's not the case with the kicker for Buffalo Bills, Tyler Vass. He's one of the very few players all around the world who apparently loves cats very much.
Tyler Vass is our hero.
Kimberly LaRussa is with a Buffalo-based cat shelter, the 10 Lives Club, and they're seeing a huge surge of donations by people supporting Vass. $300,000 and counting. What's the connection? Well, the football kicker is also a cat lover. He recently appeared in a campaign against animal cruelty, holding a cat from the shelter.
When you walk into our shelter doors, the first picture you see is of Tyler with our rescue cat.
Donations are pouring in the twos in recognition of Tyler's number 2.
People are donating anywhere from $22 to $2,222. So it's just been incredible.
A lot of the donors are fans of Taylor Swift. Yeah, she may have been rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs, but she's also the world's most famous cat lover.
To see the support for Tyler Vass and to see the support for our shelter and our rescue cats is just incredible.
Seems like a treat for me to watch all those cats. Well, that is a part of your world tonight. We'll be back again on Monday with another edition of World News Tonight. See you then. Bye for now. Enjoy the weekend.